Heisman-winning quarterback at Florida State. Team's coming off a national championship, but that quarterback also has had some difficulties off the field. Do you keep an eye on that? Do you have misgivings or concerns about any of that?
Well, yeah, you keep an eye on it, but I've got a lot of confidence in Florida State and the leadership at Florida State and in Chambers. And he's about as high profile as you get in college football, obviously, and he's situation very unfortunate from any angle that you look at it, but hopefully that can be put behind him and everyone else involved.
Just clarify what you said. The Big Five. You think the Big Five is in favor of going to a four-year scholarship model?
I think so. Yeah.
Gives the coaches takes away some of their leverage, I guess.
Well, yeah, it does, but I think that I think conceptually, I'll be surprised if you don't see that pass.
John, you mentioned confidence in the August 7th vote. After that, are you equally confident that your joint proposal with the Big 12 regarding championship game and how to stage it without divisions and doing away with the 12-team minimum, are you equally confident that that will pass?
David, I am, based on a conversation with my colleagues in the other FBS conferences at our CCA meeting a couple of weeks ago. Whether the board will address it at its August meeting or address it, they may address it in October because of the magnitude of what they'll be dealing with in August. So we'll have to see, but that appears to be on a good track in terms of probably passing.
If that does pass, what would the process be like for the ACC looking at possibly abandoning the divisions?
It'd be a case of the athletic directors having that discussion, and I would. I don't think it's a given that we would necessarily change anything. We just feel like it's appropriate for the conferences to make that determination rather than the NCAA. We may or may not make some changes. We could eliminate divisions, we could change divisions, but we may not do either. And the other thing it can affect, most people focus on the championship game and the divisions and who's playing in the championship game, but it can affect your regular season scheduling significantly too. It could give you much more flexibility in your regular season scheduling so that teams see each other more often. And in a 14-team league, we're all finding that's a challenge. You don't see each other as often as you would in a smaller conference for obvious reasons. But if you weren't forced into divisions, you can change that significantly, actually.
John, I remember a year ago you stood up here and you were talking about a lot of the issues that were concerns to yourself and the other Power 5 commissioners. I guess they kind of hinted towards autonomy being something that needed to happen. As you stand now, are you confident that everyone will remain under the Big Ten, or were you concerned about them, it coming apart at the seams if they weren't addressed?
Well, I think if this passes, in the way it's gone forward from the steering committee to the board, I think we'll have enough votes to pass. As I said earlier, I don't think you'll find anybody who thinks it's absolutely perfect. But in this exercise, you probably don't expect perfection, considering what we're trying to accomplish and with the diversity of the programs and the schools that are involved in this. So, if this passes, I think that the feeling among the 5 conferences is that gives us an opportunity to do some things significant that need to be done and keeps us under the Big Tent.
Yeah, as you said, a lot of these issues were related to student-athlete experiences. Right. Do you think they deserve a greater voice than they presently have?
Oh, I do. Sure. Yeah. And that's part of what's in the change. They would actually have voting opportunities going forward, which I think is appropriate.
How would those students be selected, you know?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah.
How much
Just wondering if it'd be like a woman and a man, or, you know, to kind of represent.
I haven't seen the details on that yet. I'm not sure the details on that exist at this point.
Would the goal of changing divisions that you mentioned be to restore natural rivalries or improve the competitive balance, or what would be the goal?
Competitive balance is extraordinarily good,
Right.
in spite of what people see on paper. The actual, if you look at our divisions playing each other, it's not exactly 50-50, but it is really close. And you can't really change divisions every time you feel like, for a 3-year period or a 5-year period, one division happens to become stronger than the other. I think that our neighbors to the south, you know, there's a time when the SEC East and Tennessee and Florida and Georgia were all at the top of their game, and everybody was, you know, saying we need to change divisions there, and the Western Division was weak, and now it's just the opposite. So you really can't react too much to the competitiveness there. You know, whether we would ever look at north-south geographic split, you know, that'd be one way possibly. I'm not suggesting to you I think that will happen, but you know, it could be another way. But we've had this conversation with the ADs with a certain amount of regularity, and it has consistently ended up right where it is.
John, the headline Friday seemed to be from the steering committee going from the 2/3 to the 60% threshold. Were you adamant either way on that issue?
No, you know, we were generally for a little higher threshold in terms of that note, but I think where it's ended up is fine. I think we're comfortable with that.
How much do you want that stipend to be, and should it be uniform, or is it okay to vary by school or by conference, or you know, the full cost of attendance situation? How much do you want to see in terms of a number of dollars?
Mark, I don't know yet, and I don't know that it'll necessarily be a set number of dollars. If it's a full cost of attendance and based strictly on the federal formula, it won't be exact from, you know, one school to the next, and it'll depend somewhat on where you live and what your travel expenses are coming to the institution. And if you're living in California and coming to Virginia Tech, that's going to be a little more than somebody living in Roanoke going to Virginia Tech. So all of those things, you know, would come into play. And as I mentioned there, the legal aspects of all this are now a more prominent part of the discussion than they were, 2-3 years ago when we were looking at a $2,000 stipend, for instance. So that part of the conversation has changed dramatically. So there may be some things that, you know, seem logical and make sense and that we might want to do that leave us vulnerable from a legal standpoint, and we don't want to do that. So, you know, the one thing about the full cost of attendance and using the federal formula to that is that it's already established.
John,
It'd be hard to argue with that.
I was just curious as to what the reaction was when you and Mike Slott first proposed a playoff system to your BCS brethren.
Well, there wasn't much reaction. That was the problem initially. I mean, even for a couple of years, Mike and I would periodically bring it up, and we were the only two in the room that had any interest in it, and it gradually changed.
What point did you sense that there was maybe a shift in thinking about the BCS? Was it towards the end of it, or? Yeah, probably, I don't know, 6 months before. 6 months to a year before we reached that point. So you must be pretty thrilled now that it didn't fall upon deaf ears at the end.
Yeah, I guess there's a lesson there. You just sometimes you got to be persistent, and people's views change, and you know, I think it's hard to say any one thing that sort of reversed the thinking of the collective group. It just, as much as anything, I think fans desire to see it, and are continuing to work to find something that could fit in the two parameters that the presidents had basically given us, because the presidents didn't want a playoff that was during the exam period in early December, and they didn't want football to become a two-semester sport. And so that kind of put bookends on what you could do. And it also limited, the teams you could have in it, because if you go to 8 at some point or more, then one of those two things has to give. Or you have to shorten the regular season possibly, or there are more significant changes that have to come in order to go bigger. So I think the 4 will, hopefully it'll go well, and I know a lot of people would like to see it at 8, but the reality is 4 is the one that fits within those bookends, and which is reasonable, I think, and so hopefully it'll go well over the next 12 years.
It seems to preserve the bowl element as well.
Well, it does, yeah, and hopefully hopefully the bowl system will remain healthy, and I think just as a fan, one great thing about it is it puts the real premium games back on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day in a 2-day. In a 2-day slot. I think college football fans will find that very appealing.
Commissioner,
how you doing, Rob?
Does the autonomy thing weaken the NCAA in any way? Do you worry that it could weaken it at some point?
I don't think it has to weaken the NCAA. I think it strengthens the 5 conferences, but I think we have a responsibility as 5 conferences to take that autonomy and do the right kinds of things with it. We've tried to find, and I think we have found a way to address the issues that are most specific to the 5 conferences, while at the same time not damaging the rest of Division I. Hopefully that's where we've landed. That's where we've tried to land.
Could it damage the rest of Division I though? I mean, if you have the haves and have-nots, where some schools are giving out, and good for them, giving out, certain things that the other schools aren't or can't afford to.
But you have some of that now. I'm not sure it's a whole lot different than now. I mean, it's not you've got huge differences within Division I, and I'm not sure that this will exacerbate that a whole lot more. Time will tell. There's always unforeseen consequences, unintended consequences. So.